Hi everybody, we're going to read some more A Night Divided by Jennifer A. Nielsen. 38. Curfew was approaching, which brought on another fight with Mama. Fritz and I wanted to keep working. With only 2 days left before he would be expected to report for military duty, our time crunch was worse than ever. If my father was on the other side, then we could connect with him tonight and be free. And what if it's not him? Mama asked. I didn't dare to think about that. If it wasn't him, then our efforts here were doomed. No, we were doomed. We won't get much farther tonight, Mama said. We're all exhausted, and it's important for whoever is listening in our apartment to hear your voices. Besides, if there's bad news coming our way, I'd rather they found our tunnel while we're not here. Mama was right about everything, especially that we were exhausted. Too tired, in fact, to put up any reasonable protest for staying. So we put down our tools and followed her home. In my bedroom that night, I was so excited about what might be in the other tunnel that I was sure I would never get to sleep. But within only seconds, sleep found me anyway. I awoke early and deliberately made plenty of noise so that everyone else could wake up too. We had a quick breakfast, chatting cheerfully the entire time about how excited we were for Fritz to report to military service the next day, and about our confidence that once the state saw how well he served, Mama would surely be restored to her former job. Lies. I was tired of always having to lie. As soon as we felt it was appropriate, we ventured back onto the street. In our anticipation to reach the tunnel, we started down the sidewalk too quickly and bumped into Frau Eberhardt. The dour woman clearly wasn't in a good mood this morning. She scowled when she saw us in work clothes and brushed herself off, even though I was sure we hadn't gotten any dirt on her. I excused their poor manners while you were out of town, Frau Eberhardt told my mother, but I thought they'd have improved again while you returned, not worsened. You bumped into them, my mother snapped. You should be the one apologizing. Frau Eberhardt straightened herself up and evaluated my mother's appearance. I thought you were a church-going lady, but it seems you have more important plans today. Mama and I looked at each other. With so much else to think about, none of us had remembered. Today was a Sunday. Mama attempted to excuse it with a joke. Well, Frau Eberhardt, I suppose some days the Lord wants us in his house, and some days he wants us going about his work. Which are you choosing? Frau Eberhardt reacted by wrinkling her nose as if we smelled. Maybe we did. And the Lord's work is gardening. Did your daughter mention that she promised me some of the harvest from that garden? She seemed to think it might encourage me to keep quiet in case I saw anything suspicious. Mama smiled at Fritz and me. Why don't you two go on ahead? We have to talk, mother to mother. Fritz grabbed my arm and pulled me off with him. By the time I looked back, they were already engaged in what looked like a very tense conversation. Something had changed in Mama the last few days. She looked tired and worried just as we all did, but she seemed younger and stronger too, as if digging the tunnel had reclaimed the spirit of who she used to be. Frau Eberhardt was right, I said. I did sort of bribe her. Let Mother work it out, Fritz said. Our job is to dig. After we made it into the shelter, Fritz and I had the luxury of deciding what to do about the second tunnel without Mama getting a vote. We knew what she'd have wanted, and that once she made up her mind, the the decision would be final. For Mama, any risk was too much. But Fritz thought Mama had made some good points last night. Other families have escaped through tunnels, he said. If the Stasi have gone to such efforts to barricade the ground above us, why not below as well? I disagreed. Why didn't Officer Mueller warn us then? Officer Mueller never said he was on our side. Fritz was right about that. If anything, Mueller had promised just the opposite, that if we were discovered, he would be there for our arrest. I listened again with my ear pressed against the tunnel wall, but this time there were no sounds. Either the other tunnel had moved farther away from us, or else nobody was digging now. I grabbed the shovel and began digging in that direction. Whatever is ahead of us, we can't quit now, I said. Maybe it's Stasi, but what I fear even more is missing Papa's tunnel. So Fritz relented and worked with me. We had to move carefully because of other pipes overhead, and there were large rocks in front of us. But at least we were digging again. Mama joined us soon after. When we asked what had taken so long, she said, Frau Eberhardt believes you two are up to something. I tried to convince her otherwise, but she insisted I was in denial. Children today are more slippery than they used to be. A lazy mother can miss the signs. Mama huffed. She sits outside all day like a lump and then accuses me of laziness? I shrugged. You are not lazy, but in all this mud, I can believe that I'm quite slippery. Mama laughed, then grew serious again when she said, Our conversation moved to Herr Krause's death. She's upset about it, just like the rest of us. She admitted that she was the one who had turned him in, but also insists she had no idea what they would do to him. I told her to go inside and stop asking so many questions, or else there would be more deaths. Does she suspect about the tunnel? Fritz asked. I don't think so, but she didn't go inside either. Shh! Quiet down! I hissed. Shh! I paused from digging and pressed my ear against the dirt. The sounds in the other tunnel had begun, and they were closer than ever. It was impossible to know exactly, but I was sure whoever was on the other side must be within an arm's length of us. Then, very high up, a stick poked sideways through the dirt. It was no rounder than an earthworm, but there was lantern light on the other side, far more light than what we allowed ourselves here. None of us breathed. The stick went forward and wiggled, as if the person on the other end was feeling for more dirt or some rock. Feeling nothing, it was withdrawn. And then the more focused beam of a flashlight came through. Still, we said nothing and didn't even move. We had been discovered. But by whom? Then, in a low voice I remembered from my childhood, someone sang an even more familiar tune. They dig and they rake and they sing a song. Papa. Chapter 39. Fritz immediately started to widen the hole, but after a quick greeting, Papa warned him to stop. Why? It took a real effort to keep from kicking the dirt wall down entirely, and my tone showed it. Sweet Goethe, how I've missed you. Papa's voice wavered a bit, then became serious again as he said, We're too shallow. We've been measuring this morning, and we're certain that we've been slowly tunneling uphill. Last night we heard the dogs over us. They might even be able to detect us below. We heard barking, and maybe we're the reason why. Then let's dig lower. The impatience I felt streamed through me like raw energy. The fact that we were just sitting here, so close and yet conversing through a tiny hole in the dirt, was impossibly frustrating. Mama stepped forward and put her hand on my shoulder. Patience, Goethe, this must be done right. There was silence, and then my father's voice broke as if he was crying. Katharina, my dear wife, is that you? I looked up at my mother and in the low light saw tears on her cheeks. It's me, I'm here, she answered. Aldous, I tried to get back to you, my love, all this time. Mama pressed her hand against the wall, as if touching it brought her closer to my father. Suddenly I felt shame for my anger toward her these past 4 years, when my father seemed to have held on to nothing but his love for her. Who was I to judge her when he had not? In apology, I wrapped an arm around her and nestled closer as she brought me against her side. Then another voice came through. Mama? I didn't recognize it, but only one other person would have said that word. Dominic? Mama pressed even closer against the dirt. She folded a little, and for the first time I began to understand how painful it must have been to be separated from one of her children. Tears filled my eyes, but with such a filthy hand, I could only let them fall. Behind me, even Fritz sniffed with emotion. You never should have dug this tunnel, Fritz, Papa said. The danger of it. Careful who you blame. Fritz said it was Goethe who started this. Goethe! He stopped and chuckled lightly. I see that she is no less headstrong than the night I left. My wonderful, brave girl, I should have known. Even from here, I heard his sigh. You suggested it, Papa. I saw you, I said. I only wanted you to know we were coming, he said, so you could be ready. Fritz gave me a look. That was exactly what he had told me. Then Papa continued, but now that we're this close, I'm glad you did. We'd have been another couple of weeks to get over to you. Let us keep digging, Fritz said. We could open this tunnel in the next few hours. Then we must dig deeper, Papa said. I don't like the way the dirt looks above us. It's like clay beneath our feet, Fritz said. It'll take a month to bridge the tunnels if we have to go lower. But he started anyway. The tunnel wasn't wide enough here for Mama and I to help, and Fritz wasn't emptying enough of the dense, packed soil to require us to remove it. Papa said he had to go back to help carry out some dirt. We promised him that we would wait there. Hour after hour passed with very slow progress on our end. The dirt on Papa's side was collapsing and sealed up the hole he had made with the stick, and even the little gap Fritz had made. Then Fritz suggested he and Mama should better fortify our end of the tunnel for when the entire gap was broken open. We need more bricks, Fritz said, eyeing the dirt above him. If it starts to collapse when we join these tunnels, I want to be ready. There's still more bricks left upstairs, I offered. Not many, but maybe one more pile on the main floor. Be careful, Mama said. Send them down in a bucket when you're ready, and I'll unload them into the tunnel. I hurried out of the shelter, up the ladder into the basement, and then up the stairs onto the main floor. The bricks were indeed there as I had thought, but it occurred to me that in this daytime light, I could possibly see into the death strip and confirmed that our propped-up floor had repaired the dark patch on the ground. It was a terrible risk to be up there with no shadows to keep me in the safe zones, But I was also becoming used to risks, and this one had to be taken. I crept to the upper floor, aware of each step I took and of even the smallest movements I made. I went slowly and kept my body pressed to the wall as if I were part of it. The window in front of me was missing its glass, but if I stayed low, they would be the best place for a view. All it would take was for a watchtower guard to look at this building while my head was visible, and it would be over. Alarms would sound, dogs would be called, and shots would be fired. Nobody would be quicker to acknowledge the stupidity of me being up here on the very same day as we would surely break through to my father. But I thought about what Papa had said, that they had gone too shallow, and that worried me. I would look very quickly. No hesitations, no stares, just the quickest glance into the center of the death strip. So fast that if I happened to catch the corner of a guard's eye when he looked again, I would be gone and he would assume it was a trick of the light. The best news would be to see the dark spot was entirely gone. There wasn't much chance of that, but I hoped at least it wasn't worse. And then I would look a little farther on, to Papa's side of the tunnel. After brushing away the sweat from my palms, I peeked through the window, but suddenly couldn't tear myself away. I had heard the phrase, frozen in fear, but never understood it before, not like I did in that moment. When I finally forced myself back against the wall, my heart was racing so much that I could barely breathe. Nobody had seen me, at least no alarms were sounding, but our problem was just as awful. A line seemed to be caving in on Papa's side. It wasn't just one little sunken area like with ours. Papa's entire tunnel was going to collapse. "Stop!" I cried. Once I re-entered the tunnel, I flew past my mother into the shelter, ignored her question about what had taken me so long, and grabbed Fritz's arm. "Papa's tunnel is collapsing just like ours. I saw it just now. I went to the upper floor and saw it." Fritz's mouth opened and then shut, and then he used the handle of the shovel to push another hole through to Papa's side. Papa wasn't there, but Dominic was, and Fritz relayed our panicked message. Instantly, we heard Dom run off, calling for our father. When Papa returned to talk with us, Fritz told him the danger signs we had noticed earlier on our end. "I see it here," Papa said. "There are fissures in the earth where it's begun to separate. How have I missed it?" "Goethe says the problem run through most of the length of your tunnel. You have to prop it up now," Fritz cried. "Unless use anything you have, brick or wood or anything that will hold it up." "Get out of your end," Papa said. "If our tunnel collapses, yours will go down too." "We can't," Fritz said. "We have to finish tonight. If I don't report for military service tomorrow, they'll arrest me." "Do not report there," Papa said. "Do you hear me? If they get a hold of you, we'll never get you out again. Come back early in the morning. If I haven't stabilized this tunnel by then, it'll be too late anyway. I want you all to make preparations to leave. Either you pass through this tunnel tomorrow, or you'll all have to leave the city and hide until we can figure out another way." "Aldous," Mama cried, "if it collapses and you're in there—" "Get out," Papa said. "Now that I'm looking, the failure is worse than I thought." "We can help," Mama said. Papa's voice was firm, just the way I remembered it on the night he said goodbye 4 years ago. "Please, Katharina, get my children out of that tunnel. I can't work if I have to worry about you too." We had no choice. We ran from the tunnel without knowing whether we would ever see it again, whether we would ever see our father again, or ever have a chance at freedom.